is Nick?
Hey,
Whoa.
I'm Klemens Franz. Huh?
It's the video's about Klemens Franz.
Franz.
Yeah,
Oh.
the
Austrian
artist.
Well, does he look like this, though?
I think he does.
Okay, that's fine. What's up, everyone? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We are the Brothers Murph, and that's right. We're talking about Klemens Franz games.
Yes.
One of our favorite artists, kind of the classic Euro game artist, has done a lot of real, absolute bangers of games.
First of all, if you're like, I don't know who Klemens Franz is, yes, you do. First of all, that's Klemens Franz.
Yes.
Looks just like what Nick said. And Klemens Franz is an artist that, yes, has done a lot of board games that you've seen
Yeah.
and probably enjoyed. And we're going to talk about our favorite games that feature Klemens Franz contributed art.
Number 10 is going to be Llamaland. This is a Klemens Franz, Phil Walker Harding, praise be, love Phil Walker Harding. This will be a pair up you're going to see again. Love Llamaland. Llamaland I feel like was a little bit underrated. Like it kind of came out and then kind of went away, and I feel like no one really talked about it, but I really like it. It's kind of like a Phil Walker Harding greatest hits game, kind of, and it's also slightly heavier for a Phil Walker Harding game. It's not heavy, it's still pretty family weight, but nonetheless, it's really, really fun. This is a game where you're set in kind of like Machu Picchu, kind of Peru area, where you're building up in the mountains and things like that, and you're having all these llamas, and these llamas are gonna give you different kinds of scoring, and you are getting these big, chunky polyomino tiles that have all these weird shapes, and you're placing them out kind of on your board, and you're building up and building up. Like you said, we're in kind of like Machu Picchu. And whatever you cover up when you place one of these tiles out, that's how you're gonna get those things, which is kind of like Barenpark, a little bit of gingerbread house, things like that. You can get various villagers, will give you kind of ongoing powers. They might allow you to exchange various resources. They do kind of a lot of different things. You can also get these resources like potatoes and corn and things like that, cocoa. And then you can also turn in these resources to get llamas. And when you get a llama, you will actually have to place a little llama meeple, a meeple. Let's not go with Llamameeple, that's a terrible name. You have to put it out onto your board, but once you have a llama out on your board, you then can't put anything on top of that llama, for obvious reasons, you can't just squish them. And so you then have to start building around these llamas that you're putting out. And you wanna put your llamas a lot of times in very specific places because the various scoring in the game that you're kind of putting your tokens out so that you can score these things are gonna want a lot of different stuff, but one thing they might want is they might want like, hey, you're gonna get a certain amount of points for every llama you have that's on like the 3rd level. So you're like, okay, I wanna make sure I'm trying to put my llamas out on the 3rd level, but then again, you have to constantly build around them and kind of weave in and out through them because you can't squish them. I really, really like this game. Again, like we said, I feel like it kind of came and went, and it's kind of a shame because I think it's really, really fun. It's got, again, the great Klemens Franz art. Klemens Franz really works with this kind of game, I feel like. It's just really, really good. If you like polyomino tile games, you like Phil Walker Harding games, give it a look.
Our next episode is going to be Boonlake. This is an Alexander Pfister game with Klemens Franz art, obviously, per the list, where you are doing actions and other people are following along these actions as you kind of are approaching this new land that you are discovering by putting tiles onto the board, and that's going to give you an opportunity to then build houses and settlements and stuff and put your ranchers out, and you're kind of doing all these things through card play, and that's where the Klemens Franz art will shine. And the things that we really enjoy about this game is that everyone's staying active, because when someone chooses a main action, everyone else will get to do, you know, a supplementary action, so you're always kind of doing stuff, and the card play has this kind of stacking effect to it, where if you have a card that gives you a certain discount and you come across another card that gives you that same discount, you can absolutely play that card to kind of double the effects. Now I'm getting $2 off this type of card that I play, or I can stack, things that are gonna give me some end game scoring. And that for us is like what we really enjoy. You're kind of managing the timing of the game by traveling down this river. The faster you go down to the bottom, the quicker you get to those interim scorings and the quicker you kind of progress the game. That's another aspect that we really enjoy in games where the timing and the ending of the game is largely in the player's hands. I think that always creates really interesting dynamics where maybe everyone's going slowly down the river, so the game's a little bit longer. Sometimes people are rushing, so you really have to kind of make sure you're keeping up and stuff like that. And I think that can be a really fun thing. But that card play, the fact that you're going out and kind of starting on a board, flipping over tiles, and then building stuff, and the kind of ramp up of that, of taking things off your board to get extra income, it's just super fun.
Next up is going to be Barenpark. This is another Klemens Franz, Phil Walker Harding. Praise be to Phil Walker Harding. It's another combination of theirs, and this is one of the first. I don't know if it wasn't the first polyomino tile game, but it was one of the ones kind of along with like things like Patchwork that I feel like really put polyomino tile games on the map. This is a game, it's called Barenpark. You are building a bear park, kind of a bear zoo. There are panda bears, goby bears, polar bears, and koala bears, which we all know aren't bears, they're lizards. So you're building out this bears, I guess, / lizard zoo. And you're doing that with polyomino tiles. And so you have like a plot of land, and then when you put a tile out, if you cover anything up, those are either gonna get you another plot of land, or more likely, they're gonna get you more of these tiles. And the tiles kind of have different sections and different ranks in terms of how much they're worth, how big they are, things like that. And you will keep building out plots of land until you have 4 plots of land, and then the game will end once someone fills in every single space on their board. And this game is constant racing because there is everything, all these different tiles and stuff are all worth points, but all these points are descending. So like the panda enclosures, the first one is worth like 8 points. And the second one's worth like 7 points, then 6 points. So if you want to get to these things faster, there are also public objectives and public goals. And those things, again, you want to get to first because they'll be worth more points. So everyone's kind of racing for all of these different things. And then you're also trying to build out your board efficiently, trying to not get stuck where you have to take like little 1 tiles to like fill in little areas. You don't want to do that. It's just really, really good. It's still Phil Walker Harding, so it's very much a family weight game, but it's just got a great look with that Klemens Franz art. It's got a nice theme, and then it's just got that like satisfying polyomino puzzle that made polyominoes it's the reason why we all like Tetris, right? And so it just has that satisfying nature to it. Barenpark is great.
Next up is gonna be Suburbia. This is frankly a game that I did not know for the longest time had Klemens Franz as the artist. This is a tile placement game where you are building your own city, and you are largely trying to make sure you have synergies by which tiles are adjacent to which other types of tiles. Because in your city, you're gonna have green tiles that are gonna be like residential types of buildings. You're gonna have blue tiles that are gonna be business and commerce. You're gonna have yellow, which are kind of your industry, and then kind of your gray, which are gonna be sort of your governmental stuff, your schools and things like that. And oftentimes, if I place a certain type of tile, I want to have certain other types of tiles around it. For example, if you have a freeway as one of your tiles, you want all of your blue businesses around that, because if you're thinking thematically, like a freeway makes it easy to get into kind of the city center where your businesses are, so it's going to kind of buff those other tiles, and you're doing this to manage your income and then your popularity, which is going to give you population every turn, which are your victory points. You want to have essentially the largest city possible. But as you go up that population score track, you are going to come across times where your city's going through growing pains, where you are going to have your population and your income knocked down steps, because the larger your city grows, the less kind of idyllic and kind of charming that, that small town city vibe, you have less of that now. So you have to do things to kind of reinvest into making your city popular. As your city grows, your income is going to go down because large cities cost a lot of money to run. So you have to continually invest in things that are going to bring in more income for your city so you can keep buying tiles and keep on growing. I really like that kind of play of I'm growing, I'm kind of getting set back by my growth, and I need to kind of redouble down and get back over the hump. It creates a really fun dynamic. And the tile placement in the adjacencies is still, like, even all these years later, one of the better examples of a game that feels like a pure tile placement where everything goes and what's around it really matters.
Next up is going to be Le Havre. This is a great Uwe Rosenberg game that ultimately is pretty simple from the outset because there's really only two things you can do in Le Havre. On your turn, you will move your boat along this line, and then you will refill various kind of depots with resources. And then on your turn, after you do that, you can either take all the resources from one of the depots, or you can move your little worker onto a card, which is a various building, and then do the thing on that building. And those buildings, again, are also pretty simple. They might give you resources. They might allow you to upgrade resources to their different side. They might allow you to sell resources for coins, but they're all pretty simple. And that's like literally the whole game. That's basically all you can do. You refill the depots, and then you can either take a big pile of stuff or move your worker to do something cool. That's pretty much it. There are also special buildings that will come out throughout the game, and those will be doing kind of more wild stuff. Again, nothing super crazy, but they won't be kind of the base buildings that are in every single game. And there's a whole bunch of those. There's like literally over 100, so you'll never play with more than like 5 or 6 of them in a game. It's really, really fun. This is one of those games where, I think Tom Vass was the one who said this originally, where it's like, it's just all good decisions. You're like, do I want this really good thing, or do I want this really good thing? And that's your choice. And that's always a really nice thing in games where you're like, I'm just choosing between cool stuff. That's pretty much it. And that's Le Havre. And again, it's got that classic like Uwe Rosenberg, Klemens Franz look to it. It's, again, very iconic. I personally really, really like it. I think it's wonderful. And so I love Le Havre. I like how simple it is in terms of the gameplay, but how deep it is in terms of strategy. I think it's really, really, really wonderful. Le Havre's a banger.
Next up is going to be Clans of Caledonia. This is, man, the second I played this for the first time, I was like, okay, that's one of my favorite games ever, and it's been that way ever since. This is a game where you are different clans in the Scottish Highlands, and you are kind of trying to build up the best industry, I suppose, for yourself by putting things out onto this shared central board from your player board that are going to then give you various incomes of production at the end of the round. So for example, if I place a sheep onto the board, I uncover on my board a symbol of wool because they're gonna start producing wool. If I have a cow, they'll start producing milk. If I then wanna go the next step, I can start to build like a cheese factory, and then I can take those basic goods and convert them into more valuable goods. So I can take my milk and turn it into a cheese. And you're largely doing this to do contract fulfillment. You're going to have these contracts of these goods that are being imported, and you are exporting the things you produce in exchange for those goods and stuff, which will be translated into points at the end of the game. Potentially getting an upgrade of a sort on your board, or getting to place a piece out on the board for cheaper, and all sorts of stuff like this. And everything comes down to your money, your cash. How are you spending that dough to get out, expand onto the board, to create as much production as possible? But every unit you place on the board costs money. Every space on the board, every hex costs additional money that you have to place. So you're really going to find yourself in a bind with your money quickly. But thankfully you can sell and buy goods to maybe give yourself a little extra cash. Sometimes completing a contract will give you money. So you're really trying to extract as much out of every single round as you possibly can with the limited dollars you have. And there's a million ways to kind of work your system, but I just love the fact that you take stuff out, put it on the board, unlock various incomes, exchange goods for other types of goods. Every round there's kind of a bonus scoring that'll happen, so you're trying to cater to those. And it's just a fun puzzle literally every single time.
Next up is going to be Orléans. You can take one look at that cover and you know it's Klemens Franz. Orléans, or Orleans, is a really, really great game that has a ton of content out there for it. They've really supported this game very, very well. I was gonna say my personal favorite is Orleans Invasion, although I don't know if that's true anymore. But nonetheless, Orleans is a game where you are gaining resources. It's a bag building game where you are taking these various kind of villagers, like fishermen, there's like farmers, there's knights, there's monks, all this stuff. You're putting in a bag, and every round you're pulling out a certain amount of these kind of workers, and then you can assign them to various spots on your board, because this spot might take a fisherman and then a farmer. This spot takes a scholar and a monk or whatever. And so you're basically assigning them, and then once you assign them to those spots, and you will then go through and do all the actions that have all of their spots filled. And if you don't have it filled, it can then sit there until next round, and then hopefully you can fill in with something else and then do that action. And then you're basically gonna be doing a lot of different stuff. There's like a map, you can move around the map, you can build out like your guild halls, your like trading posts. I can't remember exactly what they're called, because I feel like they change depending on what version of the game you're playing. You're putting those things out, you're getting resources, you're turning in those resources for various things. You're doing a whole bunch of different stuff, but again, it's all centered around this board, and a lot of this board is going to be centered around getting new workers, because you kind of start off with the basic ones, and then you want to be getting more knights, because knights allow you to go up the knight track, which is what allows you to draw more things out of your bag. You want to get more scholars, because scholars are going to allow you to go up the university track, which is going to give you a lot of bonuses. Because at the end of the game, you're trying to gain all of these various citizens, because you're going to get to take your citizens and multiply your points by, a lot of times, by the citizens you have. Like I said, there's a ton of content for this game. There's a whole bunch of different expansions that add like new deeds board, because like this deed board where you can kind of flush out some of the workers you don't necessarily want anymore over there. There's like a whole bunch of those. Then there's the Orleans Invasion expansion, which is basically an entire second game's worth of content. There's like 2-player modes, there's like 3 or 4 solo modes in there. There's a big cooperative expansion, which is Orleans Invasion. There's just a couple other ways you can play the game. It's enormous. It's so big. But I really, really like Orleans. I think Orleans is so good. Again, I think the Klemens Franz like art really works in these kinds of games. I just think it's absolutely outstanding. Because there's so many different ways to play, it kind of never really gets old for us.
Next up is going to be Caverna. Caverna is a big old worker placement game, a follow-up to Agricola. So there's a lot of shared DNA where we are now dwarven cave farmers. So we have a board that's going to have a cave half where kind of our home is, and we're building out rooms and stuff. And we have a kind of area where we can transform some forests into farmable land and have animals and things like that, and crops. And you are trying to do this to kind of generate as many points as you possibly can. And one thing we really like about Caverna is that it winds up being, and this is a Uwe Rosenberg game, and many other Uwe Rosenbergs have a similarly large menu of actions to choose from. One thing that's really fun in Agricola and now Caverna is that you're only going to start with some of the actions in the game, and then every round you're going to reveal a new one. So you can kind of, you know, if someone's new to the game, you can sort of ease them in by saying, hey, as every new action comes out, we will explain what that's going to do. And I really like that for keeping, you know, life a little easier, because there's a lot of things to consider with this game. There's a lot of directions you can go. Do I want to really build out my farmland and get a bunch of animals? That can all be super worth points. Do I want to build out my cave really deeply and get ruby mines and stuff to get these kind of variable resources I can turn into other stuff? Do I want to make a ton of crops and turn those into points and stuff later? You have to, of course, as the Uwe Rosenberg game would suggest, you got to feed your people. So you need those crops for that reason as well. And you are trying to avoid the various negative possibilities with this game, because if you don't fill out your boards, you're going to lose points. If you don't have certain types of animals, you're going to lose points. So you are really trying to find a balance between all the areas of your potential focus. You can get certain rooms and stuff which will unlock endgame scoring, which might really further give you focus to your strategy and the types of things you're trying to build and stuff. There's kind of, you know, like a Feast for Odin and these various other things, a lot of directions to go. And Caverna, for our money, has been one that we've been into and feel like we haven't truly gotten to the bottom of that mine yet, because of all the different types of rooms and options. And so it's really a game that I think you can keep on coming back to over and over again, sort of ad nauseum.
Number 2 is going to be Patchwork. We talked about Barenpark earlier being like one of the kind of godfathers of polyomino games. Patchwork is also very much that. And so Patchwork is great. I really, really love Patchwork. Patchwork is a game where you are basically getting these patchwork quilt parts. You're getting parts of a quilt because, again, it's a patchwork quilt. I'm explaining this very well. We all agree. But nonetheless, there's this big ring of these patches, and there's a little pawn, and you can basically choose one of the 3 patches in front of that one. Once you do, you'll then move the pawn there, and then your opponent gets to choose from there, and you kind of keep going around and around and around. These different patches are going to require you to pay buttons. Buttons are your currency, but buttons are also your points in the game. And on top of that, a lot of these pieces will also require you to spend time sewing them into your patchwork quilt. So it's got this polyomnalness where you're trying to fit everything together, but you're trying to manage your money and you're also trying to manage your time. Because in this game, whoever's behind on the time track is the one whose turn it is. So if you get a patch that makes you move forward like 4 or 5 on the time track, the other person might get 2 or 3 turns before you get to go again. And that can be really detrimental. So there's all this like stuff to think about. There's a lot of like hate drafting in the game. This game is really, really like cutthroat and kind of brutal for being a game about a patchwork quilt. It's so fun. It's really, really good. And then a couple times throughout the game, you will get money, and that is buttons, because as you get these patchwork quilts, some of them will have buttons on them, and when you pass these certain spots on the time track, you will then essentially get to run all your button economy, and you get all the buttons you can see on your board. It's really, really good. It's this constant mix of trying to get money, keep money so you have points, because those are your points, and then also getting the stuff to fill in your board, because at the end of the game, every blank spot on your board is -2 points. I personally just try to not have a negative score. That's, in my opinion, a moral victory for me. And so that's what I try and do in Patchwork. It's a classic. There's a bunch of different versions of Patchwork out there. It's a classic for a reason. It's a banger.
Our number 1 is going to be Grand Austria Hotel. This is one of our very favorite games. This is a game where you're running a hotel and you are drafting dice to take action. So at the beginning of a round, you're going to roll out all this big pool of dice, and then you're going to organize them by value. So all the 1s together, the 2s, and so forth. And each of the values is tied to a certain type of action. It might be gaining, strudel or cake or wine and coffee and things which you're going to feed to your guests. It might be preparing more rooms for your guests to eventually go and inhabit, and things like that, hiring staff and stuff. And the strength of the action you take will be determined by how many dice are in that column. So if I have, 4 2s, I can take up to 4 wine or coffee, but you can never have more, I think, coffee than wine, or it might be the other way around. And so you have these things, but you basically have 4 action points toward that action. So the more dice in a certain column, the better. The stronger the effect will be. And we love this game because it always winds up being like a good kind of stress. I don't play games in general to be stressed out, but I really love the challenge of, okay, I really want to do this certain type of action. We rolled 1 die for that action. I'm only gonna get a $1 discount on hiring this staff. How do I make this work? How do I pivot over to doing this other thing based on what the dice do? And I think that is a really cool antidote for getting into, I just do this one game, this one way, this one strategy. It's like, okay, well, if you would like to do preparing a bunch of rooms, that's great. How are you actually gonna do it? How are you gonna afford it? And stuff like that. And largely in this game, you are trying to feed customers who come into your cafe the types of food and drink they like. And if you do that, they will then stay at your hotel. And there's all sorts of stuff where there's red, blue, and yellow customers. There's red, blue, and yellow rooms. They have to go into a matching room. So there's just a lot of stuff to have to consider. But that dice drafting and the strength of action based on how many dice are there, I think is really cool. Something I'd like to see pop up in more games. And again, the kind of stress and the need to pivot and the ever kind of changing strategy that emerges out of the randomization of those dice really, for us, keeps this game kind of fresh and a really good kind of brain puzzle.
All right, so those are our top 10 favorite games that feature Klemens Franz art. I love Klemens Franz art. It's classic. It screams to me like classic Euro game.
Oh, yeah.
I just really, really enjoy it. Let us know your favorite Klemens Franz games down in the description below, or your favorite board game artists and some of their games as well. Let us know. And I think that's it, eh?
That's it, everybody. We will see you on the next top 10.
Bye, everybody.